Hello and welcome to No Rest for the Weekend, where we go behind the scenes and talk to the creators of independent entertainment. I'm Jason Godbey, and with me in the Rabbit Hole studio today, she is a multi-hyphenate artist. She's a musician, a performance artist, and a virtual reality content creator, Miss Maria Brodskaya. Welcome, Maria.
Hi, Jason. Thank you so much for having me here. It's really a pleasure.
It's great to have you. Thanks for schlepping to Brooklyn. We appreciate it. And we met at the Bowery Film Festival.
Exactly.
And you showed me this virtual reality presentation, which was terrific. And we kind of went back and forth. And this is probably on more the content creator end of what we do more than the filmmaking. But I think it's really interesting, and I want to have you talk about it. Some of it's stuff that I don't really know too much about, so you're going to have to take me through it.
I'll try and do my best.
All right. So I want to talk to you about projects and so forth, and kind of what you do. But before that. How did you kind of get in? How did you find music and virtual reality? How did you get to this place? Like, what is your origin story, so to speak?
Speaking of music, as I always say, I was pretty much doomed to do music and arts because I was born into a family of professional musicians, like classically trained composers, piano players, singers. So, since I was 4, I was already doing music, and at 6, I was studying in a boarding school in a different city, living without parents, doing violin and piano. And at 7, I started to do composition and I won my first composer's content with the first 2 songs that I wrote for violin, piano, and voice. And then later, when I went to conservatory, so I continued to do piano and violin. And then at some point, I decided that I just want to sing. And I made up a story, and I secretly ran away to Moscow and entered Russian Academy of Music as a singer and songwriter.
Is that where you were born? Were you born?
Well, I was born in Russia, but in a small town.
Okay.
And I grew up in Ukraine because that's where one of these boarding schools, for musically gifted children, taken from all over Soviet Union, post-Soviet Union territory.
So for you, that's Moscow was like the big city. That was kind of like the New York of where you wanted to go.
Moscow is very much yeah. It's definitely it's a huge megapolis, cultural country. Cultural, oh my God.
Like a cultural center.
Yeah. So obviously, of the world, capital, that's the word that I was looking for. So that's how I ended up being in Moscow. And I started to do jazz. And at some point, speaking of actually different medias, how different medias actually joined my musical world. So the first additional media that joined my world was cinema, because at some point I started to write music for advertisement and for documentary movies, and I did 1.5 real movies that I did music for, and I also, funny enough, but also spent some time doing 5.1 surround sound for movies as a sound engineer. And then I was like, wow, that's really fascinating. I got interested in it, and I did a year program in a theater academy. And I did a lead role in a theater play and a couple of roles in movies. One of them was the lead one. And it was fun. And so I already had music on my plate, and cinema and theater, and I was seriously doing poetry and got published in 5 different countries. So poetry was also there. I'm just telling you how complicated everything is, because I've been doing a lot of things simultaneously, and things have been intertwined into one creative experience, and because that's actually the origin story. That's how I came to where I am right now, and why I'm doing what I'm doing, and where the whole thing has started.
And how did you come to for VR? Because VR is very specific.
Yeah.
So we actually had a gentleman on the show called Jorgen Gerds who has patented several devices in VR and worked in 360 video a lot. It's something that's very different to someone like me who thinks in 2D film, but how did you kind of discover that or get into that, and what was your first project that you did?
That's why I'm sorry. I know my story is quite long, but
right.
that's why I thought it was important to actually highlight all these different moments, because eventually eventually, when I came to New York and I started to work as a music producer, like with different artists, then it led to me together with my music production partner, Grammy-winning producer Brian Forbes. It led to us creating and opening an independent record label, and through that project of ours, I met another artist who I was writing some music arrangement for, string arrangement, and I was an executive producer for her project. And she has been working in VR as a painter.
Oh, okay.
And that's how, I knew, there's such thing as VR, but as, it's pretty common opinion. A lot of people think when they hear the word like VR, the first thing that they think of is more like gaming and partying lately, but not about art. And of course, I got very fascinated by this idea that I can create in virtual reality space, because one of my secret passions was painting, and another very secret passion of mine was dancing. So I've been torn between all the different things and never had a chance to put all of them organically together. So here, such thing as VR appears on my plate of life, and I came to VR, a cinema and lab called Jump Into the Light, and they knew about my music. They knew me about like as an artist, and I tried something for the first time there. And we just clicked very well together. So they invited me to be their artist in residence. That's how I got the access to being able to work and create in VR space, because I didn't have it on my own. It's still quite expensive.
Sure.
So my very first project that I did was creating a music and lyric video in VR space, because I got obsessed with this idea of what if I can create not just like some visuals that would go along with my music, visuals created in VR, but what if I actually create the inner world of my song in the VR space? So it would be immersive environment where people would be able to dive in, to actually feel what that song is about. And here I was able to bring together such things as music, as poetry, or different medias, as visuals, and also another passion of mine of being a director. And actually I did a couple of projects as a director, but again, it was away from music and all other things. And here VR, virtual reality, has given me this potential, because it's just to put all these things together, because it's an amazing platform to do whatever you can. And that's how I was able to bring all the elements of my different very diverse and eclectic things together to create one piece. And that was my very first thing that I created. I created this virtual reality hand-drawn that I executed everything by hand. It was a music and lyric VR 360 experience for my latest single.
How do you do that? For the most part, I've seen VR being done as 360-degree cameras and things like that, and it's all captured in a camera. And I know that they do a lot in computers and stuff but that's totally alien to me. I'm not a gamer. I don't know the virtual reality gaming world or any of that stuff. I've done it a couple of times. Put on the headset. It freaks me out.
It does?
Yeah.
I was going to ask how actually it felt for the very first time. Do you remember?
It's important. When I see the first time I did it was at a friend's house.
Sorry, now I'm interviewing you.
Yeah. The first time I did it, I was at a friend's house, and he had bought a set that worked, with his television kind of thing.
Okay.
And he could hook it up through YouTube, because there's certain 360 and VR type things on YouTube. And I did it, and he had me standing in his living room. And I felt no sense of balance. I felt like the floor was moving on me.
My favorite.
And I was I just kept grabbing him and grabbing the couch.
Yeah.
Trying not to fall down. And it was just, it was immersive, and then, when I saw your presentation, I would describe it as meditative in a way.
Not a good word.
Very kind of like you're in the world of it, and it's very I think one of the things that VR does versus a two-dimensional movie or movie that you see up on a screen, it's so immersive.
Yeah.
Which can it can be almost daunting to the mind if you're not used to it. It almost feels like sensory overload. I didn't feel that with you, but some of these things that I've seen were like, dude, I got to take this off kind of thing.
Yeah, some people do feel this way.
Yeah, and I know some people get sick from it.
Yeah, like motion sickness.
Yeah, they get motion sickness from it because it tricks your mind in a way.
It does.
With yours, I felt
everything, that's exactly how our mind works. Like, everything tricks our mind.
Yeah, it's all perception. So with you, I had this sensation of like sort of floating, and being lifted off my feet kind of thing. And the music was very immersive, and the visuals, I found the visuals sort of like glow-in-the-dark graffiti-ish is what I would describe it.
Well, because it's very much like hand-drawn style,
right,
and
right.
I wanted to deliver this feeling, that it was not actually like synthesized like using some computer like presets or anything. I wanted it to look like somebody actually drew it. Like when there is some text, I wanted it to look like it was hand drawn.
How did you do that though? How do you hand draw inside a computer? I assume that there's some sort of interface that you work with.
Well, you see, in order to create in VR,
yeah,
you have to jump into into VR space, and in order to do that, you just put your VR headset on, and you find yourself in this space, where you are bodiless, and you can do whatever you can. And that was my very first impression. When I put the VR headset on, I felt like I've known that feeling back from, I don't know, from when I was a spirit or something, maybe it was my imagination, but that's how I felt. Because it does give you a feeling of being a creator. And you don't just create in two-dimensional flat space. You create everything in three-dimensional space. It can be anything. And you're just surrounded with whatever environment you want to create. That's actually to me, it's actually one of the biggest probably challenges, like when you work in VR environment.
Right, because you have to think in 360.
You know what? That's interesting. It is for a lot of people. It is a problem. It was not a problem for me, so I don't want to list it as a problem.
Right.
Just the feeling that you can do anything. Then you're just like, okay, what I'm gonna do? I can do anything.
To be a little bit technical, because I am curious about this. What can you describe the interface that you use to actually create this stuff? Do you are you sitting there with like a handset and a VR set, or are you doing it in 2D and then somebody's translating it into VR? How does that work?
Okay, I create in this virtual reality space with the VR headset on with two controllers. So one of the controllers that I use is a palette.
Okay.
With different brushes, different colors. So I can use shapes, I can use colors, I can use different structures of brushes. If I want to paint with smoke, I can paint with smoke. Or if I want to paint with just a pencil, I can paint with pencil. And as I said, like you are staying in the open space, and you literally create everything by hand.
You're standing in a space, wearing a headset, and like only you can see what you're doing.
Well, you can still see it on the monitor, on the screen.
Okay.
Yeah, you can see it on the computer. Like when somebody is staying right next to me, they will see where I'm looking at. That's what they will see. And when I want to I want to invite them into this VR space, I just put my VR headset on them, and then just like, wow, okay, like what did you create here? It looks awesome, or maybe it looks awful. And then, like it's speaking of technology, sorry, and then in order to deliver it to such platforms like YouTube 360, right?
Right.
Because we want. I can't invite everyone, in the world.
You can't share the same headset.
Yes, and just like to put a headset on each head. So I have to translate it into the language that would give everyone a possibility to look around, right? Even if you don't have a VR headset, you can look through your phone.
I've seen that too,
right?
where and I've actually taken like certain things and just sort of scanned around with the phone. And to me, it's like I'm so glad I'm not in public when I'm doing this, because it looks very weird. But I remember Samsung developed a thing where you could like wear a goggle and just snap your phone into place.
Well, yes, Google Cardboard actually does that. Yeah.
And so, I know that this is going to be technology that gets more popular, and I know that certain people. I feel like it's one of those things that certain people are going to take to it like ducks to water, and certain people are going to be like, no, it's not for me. It's too weird. It's too whatever. To me, I may be sort of in between. I'm sort of
trying to figure it out.
I'm sort of VR curious. You know what I
Okay.
mean? And it's sort of dipping your toe into that water. I can imagine being a viewer in that space, but I don't know if I have the mindset to create in that space.
Well, you never tried.
I've never tried.
Yeah.
But to me,
You should.
like this is hard enough to get a 2D screen to fill a frame in front of somebody as a filmmaker. That's hard enough, let alone thinking.
Actually, do you know that you can still shoot from the inside of VR?
Right. You can. So, do you use cameras at all?
No, I mean I use. So if I want to shoot a normal video right, inside of VR, I just turn one of the controllers into a camera. You see, magic. That's what I'm telling you. It's all magic, right? Frigging here. So I just pull up just the camera and I just shoot everything. I can shoot everything with one shot, or maybe I just want to shoot like different elements and then to edit it together. So that's how I'm also director of photography inside of it. But if I want to deliver it as 360 experience, then it's a more complicated thing.
Right.
Then you have to put the whole project together in Unity to program the camera movement.
Right. Right.
So it's a specific, very, very, very complicated technology. So it's two different things. Before that you mentioned VR, and that's how your association with VR was that it's 360, but it's actually not the same technology. They are coming from the same mother place, maybe.
Right, okay.
The same time, but it's two different things. It can be 360 but not VR. It can be VR but not 360.
One of the things that you were doing when you performed, and I thought your performance was great at Bowery Film Festival.
Thank you.
But I remember, if you want to talk about this a little bit, I think it'd be interesting. You were wearing a headset at the time.
Yeah.
That looked very you looked like an extra from Star Trek.
Headband. It does look like that, right?
Yeah, so you had this headband on.
Like neo-futuristic kind of.
Yeah. So can you explain a little bit about that and what that does?
What the hell was going on?
Yeah, it was interesting. I remember you explained it that night, but tell the folks at home.
Yeah. Well, it's actually one of the projects that I'm currently involved with, and I'm so fascinated by what we are doing. So my whole idea has started from the fact that I was curious if we can take brainwaves and turn them into music. Why I had got such a weird idea. So let's say we have 5 types of brainwaves, right? It will be alpha, beta, gamma, delta, theta, right? And when we are in the most active state, the most active brainwave would be beta. So I'm not gonna go into too many details, but I was wondering, okay, how can I bring this thing into like such technology, neuroscience? How I can bring it into serious music, like classical music, and I partnered together with the CEO or global CEO of Neura. It's the largest in the world Neura marketing company, Neura Insight. So we are working on this project together, and also Manhattan Symphony Orchestra joined us in this project because I came to them and said, guys, I have this amazing idea, what do you think? So that was the idea, to create the data of brain impressions in different extreme situations. Let's say when we perform, it's quite extreme situation, right? When we jump from the plane and we do some skydiving, that's pretty insane and extreme situation, right? So supposedly our brain impressions are gonna look differently.
And this would be measured on some sort of EEG type machine.
Exactly. Well, you see, like what I was wearing EEG headband.
Okay.
So it was actually recording the brain impressions, and later on, what I'm doing, I'm putting this let's say 3 different extremes together, and what I do, I create music out of those brain waves, because.
So you're interpreting it, in other words.
Well, I'm more I orchestrate it. So you see, because brain waves, they look pretty much like this, right? So they have the pitch, and they have the length, very close to music, right? So I'm translating it into music through that program application that we are building right now to perform with Manhattan Symphony Orchestra.
So, for instance, if you were hitting sort of a sine curve on a brainwave, if your brainwave was hitting a peak of some sort,
the sound goes up.
Sure. That would be maybe a high C or a high G above the treble clef or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And how far are you in this process? Have you composed music from it?
Well, what is happening right now? So right now we have a working prototype for that, and yes, actually I'm already working on orchestrating. I'm not composing. My brain is composing it.
Well, but you're interpreting it though.
But it's not. It's different. Like if I if I sit down to write music, I write it a specific way, right? Even if I work like in different genres and styles, the brain music sounds very different. Oh my God! Like next time when we have this, I will bring it. I will put it in your head, and we will play the music of your brain for everyone.
Okay.
Because that's actually how far we are. We can literally like use our application, put EEG sensors on your head, and you will hear the conversation, the music of your brain.
That sounds really interesting.
That's really cool.
And it's also, it's very sort of instinctual. It's very creative in the way that, when I say you're interpreting it, I mean like literally, you're taking those brainwaves and translating them into music.
Oh, yes, but yes, I'm translating it. What translates it into music is the program that we are building right now.
So
it's happening in real time.
You're doing this with a computer,
Yeah.
So you're not sitting there. You're not looking at an EEG spike and writing music.
No,
you're having a computer translate this.
Yes, and what I'm doing, I'm just orchestrating it. What was already created by my brain, I'm orchestrating it for the orchestra.
That sounds like it could be amazing, or just a cacophony. It could sound.
Well, it's
it could sound either way. You know what I mean? Because you don't. And I guess you're taking from different moments and so forth, and putting those together so that they sound good. Because you want it to sound like music and not all over the place.
Well,
kind of thing.
I can assure you, it does sound like music.
Interesting. It sounds really interesting.
It does sound like music.
If you had, we're going to wrap up in a couple of minutes here, but
already?
Yeah, I know. I told you it goes fast. But if you had any advice that you would give for somebody who is kind of wanting to play in this space or wanting to do something, maybe, if you're a 2D filmmaker looking to do something more like in VR space, or an artist looking to sort of translate your medium into VR, what would be a first step that you would tell people to do before they sort of jump off that diving board, as it were?
Well, you see, it very much depends on what a person is doing, like what field they're coming from. If it's like, as you said, if it's like filmmaking or it's music, because when people start mixing different medias, it's always important to have the main platform. You see, like music is the main platform for me, and all different medias come to this platform. If it's cinema, obviously, you can shoot your video as 360, right? Obviously it involves like a lot of complicated technology to shoot it this way, right? Because if you want your audience, your spectators, they just not only look at that specific moment that you're showing to them, but you want them to be able just to look around, to look everywhere. Imagine how much it changes not only the way how technically it's shot. That means that even the way how it's directed, how each second is thought about and just prepared, is going to be totally different, right?
Is there a way to? I guess what I'm asking is because people come at this from all different directions, but is there a way to sort of think in VR or dream in VR or sort of wrap your brain around that first part of it in terms of I'm curious about this, and how do I get to think this way?
I think it's very individual. Very subjective. I know that a lot of painters who are so used to creating in two-dimensional space, even when they are in VR space, they keep thinking two-dimensionally.
Right. So you have to sort of break your brain or break the old the old links and form new ones, kind of thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, you have to start thinking like out of those stereotypes, out of those patterns that you're so used to.
I'm going to wrap up, but if somebody wants to know more about you or more about what you're doing, where can they find you on the web?
Well, there is a lot of information about myself and what I'm doing, my performances and the projects that I'm working on my official website, which is mbmusic.com. It's AMBE music, one word, .com.
Okay. Fantastic. And you can find all your social media and stuff through there.
Yes, of course.
All
Social
right.
media, it's still MB Music.
Thank you all out there for taking this trip down the rabbit hole. It's been a fun one. For more of our content, including our movie reviews, you can find them on our website, norestoftheweekendpodcast.com. You can also subscribe on your favorite podcast app. And now we're on Patreon, so you can go to patreon.com/norestoftheweekend. Once again, just want to quick thank you to my guest, Maria Brodskaya. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you, Jason.
It was
for
great to have
having me
you here. It was so much fun. And for Behind the Rabbit Productions, I'm Jason Godbey. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.